Hey guys, welcome to Wednesday wrap up with Z-Man. And Z-Man, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It's always fun to be the most two reasonable men on the most moderate men on the internet.
Yeah,
In a world full of extremists, it
yeah,
feels
like
pretty good to be a moderate.
Matt Walsh and Charlie Kirk. We got to disavow. It is funny, and we'll talk about that. How the Overton window has really changed. And guys, welcome to the Wednesday wrap up. I love the show. Get a lot of good feedback. You guys make it possible. And if you want to see a show like this continue, please support with your questions. There's a few ways you can do it. YouTube has super chats, Rumble has rants, power chats here. Already got 2 power chats, so we'll get to those at the end of the show. And Streamelements has the tip feature. So if you give these questions, it helps to support the show, makes the show interesting. And every month I divide the tips with Z-Man. But I don't know. I was excited because, the big, beautiful bill, no tax on tips. But I just saw today Lindsey Graham wants to take that out. That's a Lindsey Graham move he would make for us. Oh, we lost your sound there, Z-Man.
How about now?
There you go. There you go.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, it's the same old crap. A couple of weeks ago I pointed this out. They find Lindsey Graham, they find that shithead Rand Paul. I despise Rand Paul, and because he's such a sanctimonious little prick. I mean, all libertarians, they all suffer with that. But anyway, they'll find some of these goofballs to stall the thing, and then say, well, we'll have to go get Democrat support. So that means that all the stuff that we want gets taken out, and all the bullshit that the bad guys want. It's the same old bullshit. And I try not to think about it. Before doing the show, I took a walk out in the woods. I looked at my garden because,
That's healthy because I put on X today, though. I bet he's not cutting out Israeli funding, though. No. That will stay in the bill. But stuff that could help Americans, we can't afford it. We can't afford it.
That's what gets me about it, is that they all of a sudden they all become miserly penny pinchers. But and of course they give the game away. Rand Paul and that mop-headed weirdo Massey. Well, if you take the immigration stuff out, then they don't care about it. In other words, the immigration money is like 1.1% of all the stuff they're complaining about. But you take that out, they're suddenly okay. They're just all liars.
They are.
It's just disgusting. And I mean, but the thing is that there's more important stuff to get angry about. So because now the cities are on fire, and from what I understand, as I tuned in here, I guess the Jews are about to bomb Iran. So
this is funny, guys, because every day, every week. Thank you for your suggestions, by the way. I do appreciate them. Some we can't use because we're on YouTube, but I do appreciate them. And we're going back and forth, and I think we decided we were going to talk about propaganda in movies and television, and I still think we're going to do that. But then all this riot stuff really gained a lot of steam. It looked like it was spreading to other cities. We'll talk about that. And this was on everyone's mind. So I knew if we did a topic about, propaganda, people would still be thinking about the riots. And then right before this, it looks like the whole riot thing could be eclipsed by this bombing Iran thing, if that happens. But this show, we will focus on the riots. If we're in a war with Iran, which I don't think we're going to be in a war, is to see we may throw a few missiles. That's an American tradition, Z-Man. We throw some Tomahawk missiles and declare victory, and then that's it.
I have the ultimate compromise here. Why don't the Israelis bomb Los Angeles?
I like that. That would. That would be good. So this has been a crazy time, and I know you wrote an essay today about it on your blog. If you guys haven't checked it out, he's at the zman.blog, right? Is that the zmanblog.net or
the zman.com?
Zman.com. Yeah, the Z-Man, though, because there's some other Z-Man out there too. I don't know what it is, but
there's a barbecue place in Kansas City that's famous. I mean, hugely famous, and they sell a sandwich called the Z-Man.
And, really? That's pretty cool.
And I keep hoping that they one day make an offer for my domain, because if it's big enough offer, I'll take it. I'm not, I own a lot of domains. I'll become something else. But there's also a big fishing company that sells the
I saw
Z-Man.
that. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So unfortunately, you don't make a lot of money selling lures. I looked them up. You know, they have like $100,000 worth of revenue a year. So they're not going to be making me an offer I can't refuse.
Yeah. So getting back to this riot here, okay, is this the Summer of Love Part 2 in 2020, or is this something fundamentally different?
Yeah, I think this is actually just a really crappy remake. You know, it's like everything else. You know, it's funny, we were talking about narratives. I mean, you can see what they did. They like, okay, you know, we did the Summer of Floyd, and that worked, and you know, we got all these people all exercised and everything, and that really hurt Trump. So we'll do the same thing with foreigners in Los Angeles, not understanding that the world had changed and everything else. And what got me thinking about this is that goofball woman Karen Bass, who, by the way, she was the senior board member at the National Endowment for Democracy, the place that does the tip of the spear for doing regime change around the world. And Victoria Nuland now works there. And yeah, so, and of course, when Bass was in Congress, she was on a committee that oversaw the National Endowment for Democracy. You know, this web of intrigue here. But way she was talking the other day, it dawned on me. It's like, wait a second. She's talking as if all of a sudden Trump had backed down. These guys, because they ran this taco thing a couple weeks ago. Trump always chickens out, right?
Right.
So they just convinced themselves that, hey, we'll harass the ICE people and ICE people. We're ICE. He'll back down, and then all the cities will come behind us, and we'll have taught him a lesson. Well, that didn't happen. Trump just went, started sending in the Marines. And she's giving this speech. I'm thinking, woman, you should look outside. What are you talking about? Well, that's what it dawned on me. That they just dusted off the old playbook. And I actually looked up the No King site. They're doing this thing this weekend.
Yes.
And they bought the site about a month ago and put this together. And they bought the site because the site has been owned by somebody else since 2011. And it was owned by a recruiting agency. Excuse me. And so, they whipped this all up. They're doing the old regime change platform, game plan, not realizing that, the optics of little brown dudes swinging Mexican flags on top of burning cars in Los Angeles isn't good optics,
Right.
And I think this has been a huge win for Trump. He's just coming up. He looks like the strong horse.
Yeah, and I saw some recent polling data that more people are behind this than even support Trump. This is a very popular position. People do not like to see, like you said, brown guys wearing a foreign flag firebombing cars. It's not really good optics. And I think the left understands it's not good optics, and they're starting to worry about it. And one of the things, I don't know if you've noticed, they're trying to start denying that this is even happening, that there is no violence. And there's been some funny montages of the media saying, oh, it's just peaceful protests. And then you see all the fire and violence. So I think the day, as we talked about previously, shaping narratives is very difficult now when everyone has, one of these. They could just show the violence and load it up to X, and there's nothing the media can do about it. And so they keep saying, oh, this is false narratives, misinformation, but you can see with your own eyes what's happening. And sure, maybe some people are protesting peacefully, but it's indisputable there's been a lot of violence.
Yeah, see, there's where I started. It's one of those things. One of my readers is a working man. And he actually works in that ICE building. He works around all those buildings where this stuff is happening. And he sent me an email. He said, it's not a lot happening. What they're doing is they got these tiny little pockets, and the media just races to go and see this. There's stuff actually happening, but he says, it's actually a lot smaller area. Outside of it, everyone's just going about their business. And it dawned on me, I'm like, I remember that during the Freddie Gray riots. In the Freddie Gray riots, it was like 3 blocks. It wasn't that long. I mean, granted, it was a rugged part of Baltimore. I mean, you would be afraid to go there in the middle of the afternoon, much less at night. But, they blew it up and made it seem like it was bigger. And that's what got me thinking. It's like, you know what? The media is in on this, because look, that gag of standing in front of a burning car and saying it's peaceful. They know, they saw all the jokes about it. So, hey, if we do the same thing, we'll be able to meme this, because these people are that devious. They think about this stuff. So, hey, let's get a bunch of our people standing in front of burning buildings and stuff. Let them do the bit. That'll go viral on the internet. and people will believe there's this revolution going on. But I think where they screwed up is that Trump's looking at this and saying, okay, I'm going to send in the Marine. I'm not going to do what you expect me to do, which is to downplay it and say, it's nothing. We're not worried about it. He's just going overboard. The National Guard. Now he's got the Marines in there. And what he's doing is called escalatory dominance. You do something, we do 10 things back. You respond to it, we respond even harder. You just keep going and going and going. And, it's a tactic, actually, our government does all the time. And he's doing it right to the city. And I think he played his hand perfectly. I mean, he looks like a champ. I mean, I saw CNN. There was a clip of the CNN where they were aghast to find out that legal immigrants are they are 20 points in favor, swung 20 points to positive Trump since this happened.
Yeah.
And it's because, look, I'm not like a huge fan of legal immigrants, but it's a bitch to go through the rules properly. And they have to go through all this stuff. And they've always been rightfully resentful of the illegal immigrant game. And they're also resentful of shortcuts and all the other stuff. So it's not surprising that they can be whipped up into that. But, it's just not working. And here's the other thing. Did you notice the videos? There's not actually a lot of Mexicans. I saw.
I was going to bring that up. Kind of breaking down what is this protest? Because it's my theory, and you can correct me. In a riot, there's a lot of different layers. You have the people that may behind the scenes organize it. You have the people that are ideological. They're protesting because they think it will hurt the country. But then obviously when you have, like we saw, the blacks looting the shoe store and what else? Oh, the Apple store. I don't think that the average black guy there really gives a shit about illegal aliens and they're not being shipped out. They don't care. This is just to break down the law and order, so they take advantage of it. And then you get a lot of these people, even the white shithead types, that this is a way to virtue signal. It'd be fun to go down there. They all have their phones, so they take photos of themselves down there. It's sort of and then the media, there's the old joke, and it is somewhat true. You could be a totally peaceful scene. I think I saw a comic and there's one little fire and there's like 100 cameras. So I'll just focus on that little fire because that's dramatic footage. They want that. So I think we got so many different layers going on. It's really hard to figure out what's real and what's driving it. If anything, does it have really any real support? Like the blacks that are looting the shoe store, I don't think they really care. And the people out to virtue signal, this is just fun for them. I don't really think they really care so much about it. How do you see this? What's the dynamic of this? Is this a attempted color revolution, or is it just what is it exactly?
Yeah, see I kind of come down on, it's like a mix of both. Yeah, I mean the blacks looting the Nike store and all that. Yeah, right. I mean that's just, we know what that is. And they're gonna, Dodgers win, they go looting.
Yes.
Yes. The wind blows the wrong way, they go loot. I mean they just look for an excuse. So you take those guys out. There is the sort of the punk college activist age person. And I've actually seen these people before, up close. And this is just a lifestyle for them. They travel around. It's like in the old days where people used to follow the Grateful Dead around. People forget that back in the when they always had these G7 riots, these people traveled around the world just to go riot in some place. It was just adventurism for them, And they live in the hostels, and they all their stuff was on their backpack. The anarchist lifestyle and all that. So you got that element in there. They turn up for this stuff, and then you do have. I think there is some elements of trying to gin up a color revolution. I just don't think they have two problems. Well, three problems. Well, one problem is I think when Trump drove a dump truck through USAID, he screwed up these networks quite a bit. I mean, look, they took $60 billion out of the system. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a lot of money. You can buy a lot of noodle-armed Antifa types for $60 billion. So that's one problem. The other problem is that Mexicans aren't really or Hispanics are just not that political, especially illegal aliens. They're not idiots. They're not going to go out there running around protesting and then get deported. I mean, they're trying to avoid that, And you look at voter turnout. Hispanics are way lower than blacks and whites. It's been a huge problem. You're more likely to get Hispanics to show up at a Superman movie than you are at the ballot box. They're just not interested. And, there's a lot of reasons for it. I mean, some of them probably good reasons, but so getting these people to go riot is going to be kind of tough. But you know what else? The world's changed, man. I mean, it's just the attitudes are changing. There's seems to be, I think, what were we talking about before? Oh, it's the white woman who you dropped the N-bomb in the park.
Yeah.
The response to that was that everybody looked at her face and said, yeah, I know what you're thinking. You just had enough of this bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just really where it is people have had enough. And, especially with immigration, Normie is he's being made aware of things he didn't know existed. The lies. Oh, it's 11 million illegals. It's probably 50 million.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just in Trump's first few months, the government says 1 million illegal aliens went out of the workforce. Well, wait a second. How is that possible? They disappear. Well, it's because there's millions of them. They're seeing remittances drop. That's why the Mexican government's flipping out, because the remittances are all of a sudden dropping off. And all this, these lies have built up. I just think it's just accumulated to the point where people are just fed up. They've had enough. And when Charlie Kirk and Matt Walsh are, I mean, they're one step away from, Fed posting on this issue. Yeah. Those guys, they have a whole team of advisors telling them where the edge is, where's the line, where how far you can go. So, if they're beyond where we are now, it just kind of tells you where the public is. So I think this it's going to be a fun thing to watch this 14th, because they have a lot of money on it. This No Kings thing, and I go to what the heck is the URL? People who are watching, go to nokings.org. It's that's their website, and they pretty much walk you through their whole game plan, their partners, all their events, how they train people. And see, that's the other thing I saw on the LA riots is I saw 20-something females in the sort of standard riot girl outfit with the whistle. And that anytime you go to, if you ever been to any of these trainings, I've gone to these training things, the not-for-profits do. They teach you how to be an activist, and they like, and the whistle part is when they have lawyers there. You blow the whistle, and then attorneys and camera people will show up, to try and get footage and so you can go against the police or whatever. So as soon as you see that, that's what's happening. But this website, pretty interesting, because it lays out all these different outfits, and if you dig around a little bit in there, many of, like, I found the ones that are close to me, all their training is done in Washington D.C. at the Sierra Club's headquarters. So
yeah.
So you find out, geez, these guys who are trying to save Bambi out in the woods are also training rioters to go burn down your neighborhood.
What do they see? To me, if I was advising them, and I think there's some people on the left, I think that clown Carney, Stephen Smith, he's that fast talking black guy that usually talks about sports.
Yeah, and all the malapropisms. He uses words wrong all the time.
Yeah, but he thinks he wants to run for president. Who knows? Why not? But he's trying to put the brakes on this, saying that he's scared that this is going to backfire for the Democrats. This is not good optics, having the Mexican flags flying and burning cars, and that's just going to, and I think he's right. So the people are running this. What do they think this making people more sympathetic to their cause? Is it trying to keep the base active so they don't become disillusioned? Otherwise, they just all OD on fentanyl or whatever they do. So this is keeping them going until the next election. I assume they're not all stupid. Maybe they are. But to me, I don't see how this really plays into it. I'd have them all have American flags and not do anything illegal. And to me, that'd be better optics. And you could say, hey, we're Americans, even though we don't have our papers. We're as American as you are. But waving the Mexican flag and firebombing, or did they just lose control of their peons? And how do you think that went down? Or what's their goal here exactly?
I got to tell you, I thought about that this afternoon. When you said we'll switch gears and we'll do this topic, because I talked about it last night on the X Space thing, and I was going to write, I wrote about it, and so I'm thinking about it, and I don't know what I was doing, and I just started having one of those funny conversations with myself, imagining the meeting. And the guy comes in and goes, all right, I got this idea. We're going to get a bunch of brown guys to riot, waving foreign flags. That'll teach those white people about immigration. And everybody going, man, that's not a capital idea. Why did we think of that? I mean, I think about it is that we understand black riots. You know, when the George Floyd thing happened, we get it. We understand it.
Yeah.
We could be kind of tricked. But normie white people could be tricked into believing that this was truly a racial grievance riot, that it was a genuine response from black people. Nobody believes this is a genuine response from the guy who cuts the grass, you know,
No.
who rides a leaf blower around the office park, it's incongruous, you know. So I can't understand it either. I think part of it is they are getting dumber. There's no question about it. You know, I've been running on fumes for a while. You know, I mean, think about it. They didn't handle the Joe Biden thing in the most obvious way, which was they knew he was desperately ill. They could have forced him out 6 months before that, found somebody, and it was so obvious. I mean, I think one of my predictions, I think I did a prediction like every year since he won, that they would put a pillow over his face, you know, I mean, because that was what I would do. I mean, it's the obvious thing, you know, you say, well, geez, you know, you have a big funeral for him, you know, everybody feels sympathetic, the new person gets picked, you know, and it's all, you know, it's all good, you know. It's so obvious, but yet they couldn't figure out how to do it. And I think they just, you know, it could very well be the same problem. And I have this crackpot theory. It just reminded me of it as to why our oligarchs are suddenly worried about immigration and they're going the other direction. And it occurred to me that it's AI. I've been using AI and working with AI a lot, and for professional reasons. I use it for, you know, code editing, code writing, and stuff. Doing this kind of stuff. I'm figuring what the hell I'm going to have some fun with it before the machines take over. And so, but it occurred to me that, you know, I used to use for some projects sometimes when I didn't have my own resources, I would farm stuff out to Indians. Now it has been a while since I did it, but an Indian programming shop, and I would just send them, look, write these programs. I give them all the designs. All they had to do was sit down and type. Really, what I was hiring was typists. That's honestly what I was doing. And then I would bring it back and I would do the QC or whoever, some other people. But these guys, but I have no reason to do that. And but it occurred to me, I was like, if you're one of these guys at, you know, these big tech companies, you're walking around these cubicle farms and, you know, your 20-story building, and you're focused on AI, and you suddenly realize all of these people are going to need something to do. They're all of a sudden going to be idle. We have too many people. I really do think that that's what there was that speech, a thing that Mark Andreessen said, that when he met with the Biden people about AI, he came back terrified and said, we have to get rid of these people. We have to find somebody to replace them. And he swung to Trump. And I think that's what's going on here, is that our rich people have come to understand that, geez, you know, there's whole classes of jobs that are going to be eliminated. And all of a sudden we're going to have a whole bunch of above average people running around with nothing to do, pissed off that they don't have a job. At the same time, though, they got angry about the diversity stuff because it started wrecking their companies, right? You got all these people around. Well, that's what I think is happening to the Democrats, or the blob people, you know, as I call them, that really the Democrats, just kind of official Washington, is they got all these people sitting around doing nothing. And a lot of them are very diverse. So they spend their time coming up with stupid ideas. And as an institution, they're getting worse and worse as they go along. As the old white guys age off and they're being replaced by this weird cabal of people, they're getting, you know, overrun by technology on one hand, which is making it really easy for us to figure this stuff out. And on the other hand, they're not really good at, it's a very long explanation to get to my point. They're not very good at executing this stuff. So you got this sort of pincer move coming. It's so easy now online to figure out the patterns and find out what's going on. And because hell, they're using internet pictures to identify people in these riots and go arrest them. I mean, look how fast that guy, the guy who was diming out the ICE people, you know, saying where
and you see his apology and everything. That was great to see. And I want to talk about that, how you can end the incentives. My theory is, I could be wrong, but you've often brought this up. For some people on the right have the same problem too. They always want to recreate 1933. But I would say on the left, They worry about that too, but they love 1968. They like going to the barricades and marching and taking to the streets. It's nostalgia for them. Even if they don't live through that, they want to believe it's the excitement about that. And they think that's the way to go about things. But the world's changed with technology and everything else. But they're still trying to recreate that because that's what they know. And so it's not a lot of rational thought like, well, wait a minute, is this really going to change anyone's point of view? Because if anything, and I know, as you said, if you take like the average, I'm not picking on this, but say a white suburban lady, middle age, that's not been exposed to diversity, she may cry about a little illegal kid that's going to get deported. That'll make her feel sad, right? They do it a lot based on their emotions. But when they see this burning cars waving the Mexican flag, that just resonates deep within them. Like, wait a minute, this has gone too far. So it's been horrible optics. So that's why I think a lot of this isn't totally controlled by it's like some guy in a volcano planning all this. Some of these are just these people that have too much time on their hands and they want it to be perpetually 1968, which ironically 1968 sort of failed too. I remember the Weather Underground. There's the whole idea, let's do revolutionary tactics and set off bombs. They set off a shitload of bombs, including the Capitol. People forget that. But it didn't move the needle. In fact, people, they couldn't stand them. So those sort of tactics, at least in the United States, didn't work. So setting afire some police cars is not going to move the needle in your direction, but they're caught up in their, like, this is how it was done and the way I imagine it, even though I wasn't there. And again, I think this happens on our side with the old alt-right, how there's some elements say, hey, let's dress up like these guys did 90 years ago in funny outfits. And, because that's how it was done. And we'll have our Fuhrer. And it's like they're stuck in the past. Have you noticed that? A little bit of this?
Yeah, it's that whole narrative business where they dream up this story and they just believe it's true. And speaking of the Hitler stuff, though, somebody on Twitter, I think I responded to him. Somebody went through the Atlantic this year and they had like 20 articles about Hitler. It's just like they're obsessed with Hitler, and he just cracking all the screenshots, and it doesn't funny in a way. But the thing is that that what I think earlier talking about, it just dawned on me. These people, they got this scheme together, saying, hey, it worked the last time. Everybody, Trump is Hitler. We're going to overthrow him. He's Putin. He's all the bad guys. He's old scratch, and we're just going to put it all together and out the door with it. And it seems like a slapdash thing. They didn't have the resources. And of course, times are different. Maybe they didn't have the money, but they also picked this is such a stupid way to do it. I mean, the weird thing with blacks rioting is that it appeals to white people for this reason. Is that white people say, yeah, we know, but they kind of can't help it. There's this.
Well, because I'll let you continue, but I used to live in Tulsa, North Tulsa, which was enriched by those people. They would literally have mini riots. Once I remember the chicken hut ran out of chicken and there was a mini riot. They had so I'm not joking. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just always ever present.
Yeah, and I think a lot of white people look and say, but we got to take care of them. I mean, that's really, there's that sense of duty, and I'm somewhat fine with it, to be honest. I mean, it's not like there's an alternative, but no one has that sense with Hispanics, because that's not how it's sold. They're being sold because this is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they're being sold to normie white suburban conservatives that, hey, they're just like you. They love this. They have the same values as you. They're going to come in. They want to be just like you. Mr. and Mrs. Roger and Helen and in the suburbs, they want to work hard and one day be like you. Well, standing on a burning cop car, swinging the American flag, a Mexican flag, while burning the American flag, that's not like Roger and Helen from the suburbs, So they're revolted by it. But also the people on the left who want to believe that these people are going to be the radicals of the future, and when really it's just idiots, and they're really not organized, because that's been a very frustrating thing for the left, is they can't seem to organize the Hispanics into this revolutionary proletariat that they imagine them to be. Most of them, look, this is the truth. Most of these people come here, the Mexicans, The Central Americans are a different animal. The Mexicans come in, they just want to work. That's it. They just
Yeah.
just want to work. I mean, they are fairly harmless, and I'm actually, my views on immigration are a little nuanced. I don't really have too big a hang up. The Mexican immigration problem that ended about 25 years ago. The problem we have now is Central America,
Right.
South America. We're getting people we're getting people crossing the border from Iran. I mean, Iraq. It's completely nuts what's going on. But I think, you're not going to turn that group of people into some revolutionary class. And I think the left is kind of frustrated by it. So it really was just it's a harebrained stunt. Which that may be why they pushed the people in the volcano decided, well, let's got to push the other button and we'll have Israel bomb Iran. We'll move on to the next plan.
Yeah, well, that was my next question, because there was this LA riots, right? And then yesterday it looked like I saw, there's riots now in Denver and Chicago and all these other places. I don't know how big they were. Did those take off, or is it already fizzled, the whole thing, you think?
Yeah, that's it's funny to bring that up, because when earlier today, I guess it was last night, Tuesday night, I was doing the X business, the X show, and it was the guy Dan Lyman was on there. He's like, "Oh, well, there's a riot in Chicago. There's now a riot in New York. Is it right?" And I know you hit me up today. I'm like, "Yep, you're absolutely right. I was thinking the same thing." We haven't heard anything about this. I mean, in New York, the mayor called out the goons. I mean, they beat the crap out of those people. I mean, he was not screwing around at all. People in traffic were trying to run them over. Yeah. I mean, it was not a very good scene for them. I'm thinking that, and that's why I think Saturday will be interesting, because if it turns out to be a dud, it really just tells you that the evil empire, the volcano people, the blob people, whatever you want to call them, they're on their back heel, because they did better work than what we're seeing. And, they've actually, in my view, they've probably done more to help the immigration cause than the VDARE people did in 25 years of existence. Just in 1 week, they probably changed more minds. I mean, no offense to Peter Brimmel, but
Yeah, no, I agree. They've been wonderful for our cause. I'm like, man, to show the pictures of the waving the Mexican flag, fire burning, throwing gang signs, perfect. That's what we need. And so I get the sense too that the people behind the scenes, and again, I'm not trying to say this is all a super big conspiracy, everything's all coordinated. You have a lot of free agent types, I guess you would call them, the looters, they just come on after the scene. But I think the word has come out that, we're going to shut down funding a lot of this. This is not working. We're having a negative aspect to it. And some people will be slow on the uptick, some fentanyl head or whatever out there try to do it. But I think if the left pulls the plug on the people that fund this, and if they're not able to provide them protection, and this is a key thing, because one of the things I think the left, they've always been able to do these riots or protests, whatever you want to call it. And there was always a tacit understanding. They never really faced a serious penalty. It was always a little slap on the wrist. They'd have plenty of lawyers get them out. No, they may be arrested, but they're out, later that evening. No big deal. But if the government and the feds, let's say under the Trump administration, goes after them hard, like that one kid that was doxing those ICE agents, that could change the game if they're facing like 20 years in prison. Because in all seriousness, throwing a firebomb, that's a pretty serious offense that can give you serious prison time. And if we made good on that, I mean, look at what happened to the January 6 people just for wandering around taking selfies. If these people face serious prison time, the word would get out, and a lot of these people, they're happy to be edgy revolutionaries when there's no real risk, right? But when there's a real risk, then it's just not fun anymore. And they have, they're busy that night. They can't show up to the protest. Do you get that sense too? And do you think that could put a dagger in this, just the fear of real prison time for these people?
Yeah, I think, there's one of the things that, if you remember back, I guess it was I somewhere in the first Trump term, where it was a male and female attorneys firebombed a police car in New York, and they got arrested, and nothing happened to them. I mean, they didn't even get disbarred. I mean, and it went, that kind of messaging, gets out that, hey, you can do what you want. Because look, I saw this in Baltimore after the summer of Floyd. All of a sudden, traffic. I used to ride my bike on streets. I stopped doing it because it became terrifying. People were getting hit by cars because a certain element just realized, hey, they're not going to pull me over. I can do whatever the hell I want. And it was amazing. I mean, I would see people going down the wrong side, one-way streets the wrong way, just, because they felt like it. And, because, the cops were terrified. They weren't going to arrest them. They knew better. And so I think, the same thing applies here. I mean, and, we're seeing, and I saw the cops just beating the crap out of these people in New York. Hey, you know what? If I'm 3 rows back in the black block and I see the guy in the front rows get whacked by a mounted horseman, I'm thinking, hey, I think I've had enough of this. It's time to head home, because you're not going to beat those guys, And look, it's the old rule. I've said this a million times. If there wasn't for police protection, Antifa would have had 1 week of activity because the other guys would have beat the shit out of them, and that would have been the end. So. And look at what happened in LA. I mean, I think it's really kind of amazing. I mean, Bass clearly folded on this thing and she declared a curfew. All of a sudden, because they were taking the cops off the street, they wanted to let things go crazy. And the cops said, no, we changed our mind. We're going to go out and arrest people now. And, and I think it's just a forcefulness. So, look, Trump, you can complain a lot about what Trump does. I mean, there's a million ways to complain. And last night I introduced this idea. The people who are addicted to the turd sandwich, they've been fed the turd sandwich so much, it's become this emotional support item. So every time there's good news, they start pulling out the turd sandwich and saying, oh, well, it's not good. It's actually bad for this reason or whatever, because they can't enjoy any happiness at all. And this is a huge win. Trump he did exactly what you're supposed to do. He was prepared for it. He upped the ante. Stephen Miller was just crushing people on social media, and I'll use a crude expression. He just went balls deep on these people in Los Angeles and won, and this thing could be over just like that, and that's what you have to do, and it sends a huge message because Osama bin Laden was right. When you see a weak horse or a strong horse, you back the strong horse. That's just human nature. And I think that, his polling has done better because of all this stuff, taking a tough line. And you notice he hasn't been saying a lot. Somebody asked him about arresting Gavin Newsom, and he had that smirk on his face, like, why would I arrest that bleep? Like he's a nobody.
Speaking of which, Gavin Newsom, I think, because I think he has presidential plans in 2028, or at least try to be a nominee or run. I don't know, but I think he saw this as an opportunity as to present himself as like the leader of the resistance, all that type of thing. And so he tried to capitalize on this, but I don't think it's very effective. I think it's going to backfire for him. I don't think it's going to be effective tying him to the burnings, the lootings, and all that, all those images, and how he handled himself. What do you think? Do you think he has helped or hurt himself for 2028 with his behavior?
Yeah, it's a great question because it goes back to what we were saying before. It's like the people who have executed this plan are idiots. I mean, if I was advising Gavin Newsom, I'd say, you know what you need to do? You need to come down hard on these people and show that you're a no-nonsense guy, because people respect that. Reagan became nationally famous for cracking down on the protesters when he was governor of California.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. And even the Democrats, they had that strategy, the triangulation strategy. I think Clinton did that with they call it the Sister Souljah moment or something, where he attacks someone radical on the left. And so it's because it's a way that you can, even if it's not true, you can signal to the other people in America that, hey, I'm not one of these crazy California people that believes there should be anarchy. I am for law and order. And he could spin it in a good way. I think we need to protect the undocumented, or whatever he wants to call them. And he could try to spin it that way, but at the same time saying, but there's no excuse for firebombing, and I'm not going to tolerate that in my state. I think that would have been very effective for him going into 2028 as a potential candidate for the Democrats. He didn't choose that way, though. And I don't think he's as smart as people think he is. I really don't. He kind of has the look, but I'm really questioning his ability to win on a national basis. And I think he has hurt himself with his behavior in this whole thing, because he went against Trump, and Trump definitely won. Oh, you're muted.
Ah, damn it.
Oh, that's okay.
All right. Yeah, the play here, again, that just seems so obvious to me. The play was, look, odds are, the Diversity Now stuff was a dud. It failed miserably. So 2028, the Democrats, they need to go find themselves a white male moderate. That's what they need,
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And so Gavin Newsom is like the only guy they have. Somebody said, "Hey, look, you go out there, because he kind of." The weird thing about Newsom, I honestly, I don't live in California. I don't pay much attention to California politics. And to be honest, I don't really like California much. Just not my kind of state. I've been there a bunch of times. I just don't like it. And I'm not a beach guy. I don't want to go surfing or any of that kind of stuff. It's just not my thing. So, I just don't get into California that much. And my California listeners out there, I don't take it personally. It's just it's more about the weather. Strangely enough, I don't like California's weather, which sounds crazy, but but anyhow, I get when I did see him the first time in full was when he debated Ron DeSantis. And I thought this will be hilarious because Newsom's got those Hollywood looks. He seems like a real slick sort of guy.
Mm-hmm.
And DeSantis is about as charming as Mike Dukakis. So this might be funny. DeSantis was scintillating compared to Gavin Newsom. I mean, holy smokes. I mean, how in the hell? He was a combination of boring and wimpy at the same time. Mm-hmm. It was just a terrible combination, especially for a man. And so, I mean, this would have been a good chance for him to break that mold and say, I might not be a butch guy and all this stuff, but I'm a no nonsense sort of person and, practical and all this. Because you could imagine him in 2028 saying, I stood up to the rioters that Donald Trump tried to unleash. And I say, because, they would lie about it,
Mm-hmm.
And, but instead, I think his career's over now. I mean, I think that's it. I think he had his chance and that's the end of it. And and you start looking at what's happening right now. If I'm on the Democratic side, I'm deeply concerned. The immigration, you've lost. You just need to. What they need to do is go the other direction and say we're going to try and outflank the Republicans on immigration. We're going to get tougher. I think that's really the only choice they have. And they've lost their diversity issue. I mean, because the courts are getting ready to knock it all down too. They just ruled for that white woman. It said, you were discriminated against as white, and discriminating against white. The courts basically said that any kind of discrimination based on race is illegal. Well, that just kills that just kills off the affirmative action and all this stuff. And they're in trouble. They've got big problems here, and that's it's a good example though of how our system works. You'll notice that the Republicans are now starting to try and figure out how to undermine Trump because, we're not going to get the help out of the Democrats. So now we have to go to the Republicans to help them, screw over the people, So, Rand Paul, we need you, buddy. Put on your libertarian costume on and the horn and, come out here and rant about the bill. And he said Lindsey Graham wants to take out the tax on tips.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
there's a real toss up there. Which guy I hate the most, Rand Paul or Lindsey Graham?
I have problems with both, but I'd have to go with Lindsey Graham
I think it's because of his peculiar taste.
Yes.
Yes.
So, he's more of a warmonger, I think, than Rand Paul too. So
you can be sure he's one of those guys that like young males who are congressional age, college kids or pages stuff. They're all in orientation are told to stay away from Lindsey Graham.
Yes,
you can be sure
yes. I know that's definitely. I want to approach this as something a little different because it sounds like we're kind of minimizing this. Like this isn't really that big of a deal, but is this more of a? Even if these riots should kind of fade away for now, do we have an underlying problem still where this experiment of the Union is again about to break apart? We had that issue in 1860. We had a big civil war. We're seeing very almost similar things, ironically. It's like California is becoming like the Confederates, but we're Democrats. We believe in states' rights. Why should we have to listen to Washington's immigration policy? Are we starting to see a breakup or in the fault lines of the United States based on regions. And it's just the polarization is so great now. And that's one of the, are you familiar with Thomas Chittum? He wrote Civil War II.
Yeah.
Yeah, he argued that one of the signs of upcoming a civil war is when you have extreme polarization of American politics, where they have nothing in common. And I kind of see this happening now, because even the people on the right, like, I don't care, open fire on these bastards, and we're not going to be guilt, we're not going to cry, we don't give a damn. And then it just seems like a lot of so I was just wondering, is this something that is this is just the dying embers of the Democrats, or are there real problems here that there's nothing that's really binding us together, so we're just seeing a symptom of that?
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because my Friday Friday podcast is going to be about that. The things that
really,
it's Friday the 13th, so I thought, well,
perfect, yeah.
The great doom, and
yeah.
What got me thinking about it is that anytime I have, and I do this on purpose, when some Indian guy shows up, whether he's an elected, or some guy, Kana, I think his name is, he posted the other day. And but any of these guys come up, I post something to the effect of, under no circumstances could you and I ever consider each other citizens. There's no way it could possibly, fellow citizens. It's an impossibility.
Right.
And I get tons of hits with that. I mean, there are always posts that have huge engagement, and that's because we've become a country of strangers, and we're starting to become company. Instead of, no one wants to be strangers, no one wants to be animalized. So what you're seeing is a big chunk of sort of normal white people, the 80% of white people, kind of grouping into one group, and we have our own. We're developing our own metaphysics and our own morality. We have our own understanding of how the world, and this is how we ought to act. And it doesn't include a lot of Spanish guys. Not all. I think there's probably a lot of Mexicans who probably, they'll be white nationalists with no problem. They're very happy to do that. There's a guy.
Well, the most famous white nationalist claims that he's Mexican. I won't say who.
But, that is true.
Yeah,
That's just true. That's just true. Yeah. And there's Nino. What the heck is this guy? I can't remember. He interviewed me once. He's like from Venezuela, but he's a European guy. And he's as hardcore you're going to get. There's a lot of you see a lot of that. I mean, I've always been a squish on the whole Hispanic thing, because it's a fake category. There's no, a guy from the Dominican Republic is not the same as someone from Cuba. They're completely different animals. But anyway. You're getting this separation, though, and all these Venezuelans and Guatemalans and Salvadorans and Honduras, all these different people. They're not us, and they're never going to be us. And people are starting to just come to accept that. And that's where we're seeing those faults, those splits, but we're also seeing class-wise too. The worship of rich people and the worship of money that really got going in the 80s, I think, has run its course. And I think it has. I wrote a post. Was it this week? Yeah, maybe it was this week, about materialism, about how to be a dissident in this age is that you recognize that some things you can't put a price upon, and so therefore they're not exposed to the marketplace. It doesn't matter if 50% plus one likes or dislikes them; they're true. That's it. They're just true, or they're just too valuable to our culture to question. And I think that what we're seeing is this kind of splitting up along those kinds of lines, where I don't worship rich people. Just because Elon Musk is the world's richest man, well, so what? He's still a weirdo. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. He's a very weird individual who very well may be a billionaire who takes drugs, serious mind-altering drugs. People are saying he was taking ketamine, for goodness sakes. No.
Yeah, I heard that rumor, and he has behaved kind of weird about the whole Trump is on the Epstein list and blah, blah, blah. And then he's walked that back and apologized. So it was strange.
Yeah. I mean, and, a lot of these guys, Mark Zuckerberg, look, he's a lizard person. He's probably not even human. Who knows what he but I mean, we're just the old rules of the late 20th century rules of morality and our sensibility and our sense of identity. That stuff's all falling apart. And so we're forming up new stuff, I was at the Old Glory Club last month. It was this June, so it was in May. And there's all these young white guys, from like 25 to 40, right? And they're prepared to live in a world that's entirely different than the one that I lived most of my life in. And because, and in a lot of ways they've been, without really me noticing it, the world has been preparing them for that, because it's killing off the old civic nationalist America, the old 85% white America. And I think that's what's going on now. Whether it leads to destruction and doom, I don't know. I mean, look, I've done this before. Our society requires an average IQ of about 97. So when you start looking at the average IQs of the various populations in the country, we're at about 96 right now. So, we're at that point where a lot of the things that we expect to work we can't keep them working. So stuff's going to stop breaking. Look, in Baltimore City, part of the water system no longer works. People are actually living in bottled water. Part of the sewer system doesn't work. They're in porta potties. I mean, St. Louis has a problem like this. Detroit has had this problem. Flint, Michigan's had this problem. California has a huge water problem. There's going to be really one drought and they're out of water, for goodness sakes. Because, there's like one Jewish family controls the entire water supply for the state of California, for like the almond farms or something like that, So, I mean,
they've had a lot of horrible policies there. Would you, I guess I'm asking you, are you more Jefferson Davis or Abraham Lincoln? Would you be okay of a state like California leaving the Union?
Well, I would be okay stripping of their representation. What I wouldn't be okay with is them making a trade deal or a military deal with China to have China set up military bases in Long Beach or whatever. But I think what we need to do with the states is do like the British soccer league does, where if you're not very good for a while, they drop you down to the next level, a relegation. So California needs to be relegated to a B class state. So they get to have representatives, but they're not allowed to vote on it. Their representatives don't have voting power in Congress. If they get their act together, like give them some conditions or budget and various things, then they get bumped back up again. And problem is that all the B class states would be all the Democrat states, so they would never get bumped up again. That would just be the end of it for them.
Yeah, that's always the problem, is when they ruin their states and they move elsewhere and they bring their policies with them. It was interesting to see all this. We California shouldn't have to follow what the federal government says. I'm like, wow, okay, I heard that argument before. And so I don't know. I don't know if it's a civil war coming in the future, but it does seem to be an unstable situation, put it that way.
Yeah, I think, the Civil War was easy because of geography. It was north and south. It was pretty clear. Think about it. In your state, you've got shitheads in Fayetteville,
Yes.
that are just as shitty as all the best shitheads in any other shitty place. Fortunately, I don't think we have any here in West Virginia. It's because the bad people hate West Virginia so much they refuse to even visit. It's actually we have this beautiful area. And we actually struggle to get tourists to come visit it because we have such a bad reputation. I kind of think we should actually try to make people think that reputation is worse than it is. Maybe have I thought about making a joke tourism video and saying, and we have racism and we have all these terrible things. But yeah, the thing is that it's more, the divisions are more. There's class divisions, there's political divisions, there's religious divisions. You go to church on a regular basis? Are you a church goer?
No.
Okay. But when you get around people who are connected with their church, it's almost like they're from another country.
Yeah,
they're just different. They have they have things they do that are related to the church outside of church. You know what I mean? And so. I could see like the Mormons becoming like the Amish and saying, screw it, you can't come into our state. We're becoming Fortress Utah. So we're gonna look like Yugoslavia for a while, and then I think that's really what it's going to be.
Yeah, it is interesting because another big Hispanic state, but there really hasn't been many issues like California, is very different, is Texas. Yeah. And for whatever reason, the Hispanics in Texas seem to be quite a bit different than the Hispanics in California. And maybe it's the agitators that organize them or whatever. But, California always ends up doing this nonsense, not Texas.
Well, and if you talk to the Mexicans in Texas, they'll tell you that it's different Mexicans. They're the Norte, the northern Mexicans flowed into Texas, and it was central and southern Texas. And you know what? I think they might be right about it because they do look different. You go to Texas and yeah, they're Mexican, but they kind of look like Spanish guys or Italians or something.
Yeah. Years ago, I did a show with this girl. She was Mexican. She's white, but Mexican. And she's often told me that northern Mexicans, they're kind of like the cowboy culture, really. And they have nothing to do with southern Mexicans. They consider them pretty primitive, and they hated all the migrants that went through. They didn't want them stopping there.
Oh, yeah.
I
spent a lot of time in Texas. I mean, you see the gauchos, all the I mean, they're into all that Tex-Mex stuff, because you have, they'll do the not square dancing, line dancing, but it's with mariachi bands and stuff. I mean, it's all mixed together. It really is a different animal. And I think it's saving Texas from becoming, and saving the country. I mean, think if Texas turned to California electorally, it would be a catastrophe.
Yeah, and as I said, when I analyzed the political results, I was wrong. I thought Texas would soon go blue. It hasn't. It's actually got redder. And so it's really strange how that's happened. But so I think there are regional differences, and regional differences have always plagued the United States, and it creates a lot of tensions. And I think we still see that because California does things very strange. And
we would do ourselves a world of good. And the answer is right there, is that you roll back all these military ventures, get out of Europe, get out of the Middle East. We don't need to be in these places. Same with Asia. And then we go back to where most of our government is local, regional, that's where it is. And it would be fine. But you know what? Everybody knows that's the right answer, but you have all these problems. I mean, you think about it. Trump wants to do the right thing in the Middle East, but the Israel lobby is preventing him. He wants to do the right thing in Ukraine, but the military-industrial complex and the neocons are stopping him. He wants to do the right thing with the Chinese. The military people want to stop. All these problems we have are all in our own backyard. These vested interests, who just won't let us live the way we're supposed to live.
Right. I mean, the way that, and we're not in this country anymore, but it should be the states. If California wants a bunch of Somalis, let them have fun with it. But the problem is they vote, they spill into the rest of the country. So there's practical problems with that. I
mean, if we had zero immigration from this point forward, and we get rid of the illegal population, we can make it work. But it's going to have to be the states take the bulk of the duty. If California says, hey, we're not going to have guns and we're going to have, rainbow colored marble devices in every school or whatever, as long as it does not have any impact on the neighboring states, who cares? Because, it'll figure itself out from there. I mean, look, the founders understood this. They talked about this. Ben Franklin said that the great savior of America is that we have lots of cheap land. We have lots of space.
Yeah. So we can do that. All right, we'll take some questions now, and you guys keep sending them in. I appreciate that. We had some before the show, but send them in now, and we'll get to it if you like this type of program. Let's see. Pam Hyde, I'll start with the rants first. I think Mexicans might be too lazy to keep up a riot for more than a week. I don't think it's so much lazy because a lot of them are very hard workers. But did you ever see that? What was that movie, Napoleon Dynamite? Do you ever see that? He had the Mexican friend, what was his name? Pedro, just kind of slow and nice. I kind of see them pretty much that way. They just want to do their own thing. They don't want to go to some protest, throw firebombs. They just want to listen to I call it mariachi music. It sounds like clown music to me. It all sounds the same. I don't know how they can enjoy it. It's all like the same song. It's just, but they love it.
Yeah, for the 500th week at the top of the charts.
It never changes. You have the trumpets, and they just love it. And
when I was a young guy, I was around a lot of Mexican dudes.
Yeah.
And I won't get into the reason why, but one of the things I noticed about them is that they never wasted their energy on things they didn't think were absolutely important. That's just the way it was. If it was important they had to do, it was a work thing, they'd bust their hump. But if it was something for somebody else, they'd take their sweet old time because they figured there's a weird logic to it. If they were slow and lazy, that person would stop asking them favors. I was like, all right, it's perfectly sensible.
Yeah, and it goes back to the nature of the riots. I think the ones that really drive it forward are kind of the girl boss, college age girls. At least they're the ones with the most energy, try to organize, make sure all the signs match and all that. The rest don't really care. So, and they're very sensitive too about legal problems. So, if the girl bosses, so that could stop that.
Well, and the girl bosses are also they've been raised up on this romanticization of blacks in general. They haven't had this with Hispanics. There's not this worship of Hispanic guys. There's no magic legume. We have the magic black guy in movies. We don't have the magic Mexican. It's just not the same thing. Having Pedro, the guy who runs the lawnmower on Daddy's office park, winning his admiration doesn't count for her. It doesn't mean anything. Having Mandingo bringing him home for dinner after a riot, now that scores a lot of points.
Right. And Rojas, he provided this. Thank you, Rojas, for your rant. He provided this quote. Let's see here, and want to see if we agree with this. Mexican immigration is a unique, disturbing, looming challenge to our culture integrity, our national identity, and potentially to our future as a country. I guess what we're saying, and I would agree, that's less of an issue, especially the Mexican thing is almost over than the other groups. I would say Somalis are a lot more, and Haitians are a lot bigger problem. Indians are too. And to be fair, we've always had some Mexicans, especially in the Southwest. They're old timers. And it's so I don't know if I agree with that as a unique and disturbing challenge. I think there's others that are more unique and disturbing than Hispanics.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things. The term Hispanic, which didn't exist until Nixon. They just made it up for the census, and it was basically if you're not white, you're not black. All right, you're Hispanic now, and.
Well, some Hispanics are white, though, so that's even more confusing.
Yeah. Because if you look down, they actually try to get you start looking through like demographics and stuff.
Yeah,
non-white Hispanic, white Hispanic, Hispanic other. I mean, it's just. But look, I've been around Cubans, I've been around Dominicans, I've been around a lot of these people, and they're not the same. And but I think what Buchanan in his general, or that was Buchanan, it was Sam. Oh God, what the heck was the guy's name? Huntington. Is that I think that's true, and it's weird. Buchanan actually, people have been finding these clips of him 10 years ago predicting that 2025 would be like a real problem where Hispanic immigration would kind of come to the surface, the problems with it. But yeah, I mean, I think look, just think about how much tension we had in this country when it was 85% white and 13% black and 2% other. Just imagine how much tension we're going to have when it's 50% white, and all these the other half is all these different flavors. I in some respects, I'm kind of glad I won't see it. You know what I mean? Because I think it's going to be awful.
My theory about immigration and will it work? It depends on how far apart people are genetically from you. Yeah. And I would say Hispanics, because it's sort of a mixture, they're part European, part Indian, part whatever, tend to be closer to us genetically than, let's say, Haitians or Somalis. And they also, there's just more than just genetics. It's also they tend to be Christian, not all, I know, but that's their heritage. But they don't speak the language, that's a negative. So that's how you kind of evaluate, in my opinion, who can really fit in or not. So yeah, I don't apologize. I don't have problems if a bunch of Norwegians next to this small town, nearest small town to me is like 20 miles. But if a bunch of Norwegians moved in, I wouldn't care. If a bunch of Haitians moved in, yeah, that would suck. And because there's a difference. And until recently, you couldn't even say that within the mainstream Republicans. They'd get security and escort you out if you said that. Now all the Republican leaders are saying that.
Now if you sound like me, if we say, I'm okay with Mexicans, get out of here. What the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, I know.
What's your problem, buddy? Yeah, I mean, I think, the truth is that, these divisions, it's going to be strange because I do think a lot of Hispanics are going to look around and say, and I think it's already happened. I think we saw it in 2024. A lot of them looked around and said, you know what? I feel more comfortable on Team Whitey, so I'm going to be on Team Whitey.
You know, I was just going to say this, and this will upset a lot of our viewers, maybe, but oh well. I always piss off people about various things. A lot of Hispanics have basically become functionally white. I know that will upset some people, but I really think that's true. I think it's a little bit more difficult for the Black population to do that, though.
Yeah, it's an impossibility. I mean, look, if we could assimilate the Irish, we'll have no problem with a lot of the Hispanics. Not all of them, of course.
No, not all. And again, that's such a broad category. People from Guatemala versus, but you have these northern Mexicans that dress as cowboys. That I mean, a lot of them have a lot of European ancestry, and you know, I don't want to go down the older national conservatives. I don't want to sound like that because that's so cliche. But in this sense, some of them are. You know, it's.
And Cubans are a great example. You know, the Cubans,
big time. Yeah.
They're a little. I mean, they're a little hardcore, but yeah. I mean, I think it really is a case by case. But I think, look, if we just simply say, all right, enough immigration, get rid of because the illegal population is mostly clearly non-white. People all think that they're Mexican. They're not. They're Central Americans mostly. Right. You know, the Isthmus, South America, Venezuela, Colombia, stuff like that. Those are the people we need to get rid of. The what's left has a chance to make a go of it. You know, we have a chance. And but a lot of it will depend upon the economics of things. Look, if AI is even 80% of what the promoters say it is, we got big problems coming, because you know, you're talking about millions of people who are going to be displaced out of the workforce, out of offices, not out of factories, out of offices.
Yeah, and I don't want to pick on the guy, but you know, like Nick Fuentes is obviously who I was referring to, but he's an example, right? When he was arrested because he gassed that Jewish lady, that was a funny episode. But then the cop asked him, they had the body camera footage, like, "Well, are you the white supremacist?" And I remember he said, "No, how can I be a white supremacist? I'm Mexican." And so, you know, this is where it gets a little confusing, right? So it's not as clear boundaries as people think it is. And
yeah, hey, look, you know, in the 18th century, I would have been, you know, Ben Franklin would have said, "I'm not white because I'm from northeastern Europe primarily." You know,
and he would be correct. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's just the way it was. He didn't think Germans were white. You know.
Oh, well, okay, then I'm not white. Yeah, because I got some German in me. Yeah, but yeah, so I'm half white.
I mean, but the point is that these definitions do change. He meant white in a very narrow, really ethnic sense. You know. And you know that's I think will happen with a lot of Hispanics. You know, it's going to be like the that funny bit that they do in I think it's Family Guy, where you get pulled over and the cop takes out this color wheel. We're going to end up with a brown paper bag test. I'm sorry, Jose.
I hear a lot of people, they're probably saying, "Oh no, you guys are sounding like race deniers," and I'm not. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying in reality, race isn't, and most things in life, people like nice, clear boundaries, right? It fits our mental construct. But in reality, there's a lot of edges and blurriness. I always use the example like, where does the Earth's atmosphere end? The exact spot. You can't say it. Right. I mean, just kind of, but it doesn't mean that the atmosphere doesn't exist. Like, oh, because we can't say exactly where it stops, that means it's not real. No, it's real. Race is real, but obviously you have some edge cases and stuff. And I would say a lot of people kind of fit within that white category. Since I got people mad, I'll get them mad again. I think like Stephen Miller kind of fits within that too. It's one of us. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I mean, I mean, it's a shame because that would be a good show. And I don't write about that topic, the Stephen Miller topic. But it's a topic that's worth exploring. We've got a lot of things going on demographically in this country, but the Jewish population has some really wild things going on in terms of things like TFR, marriage rates, outrage, identity in general. You know, I mean, there's a revolution going on within what it means to be Jewish in America, but you can't talk about it because, I mean, even Jews can't talk about it. I mean, it's just insane, this oppressive society.
It is. And when you get to know some, I knew this one girl pretty well, and she confided with me, you know, they understand like blacks, and that they have no, you know, they understand, at least her family did. So we always think there's some big alliance, and it's like, no, they understand what neighborhoods to stay out of. And
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, I have people in my comment section all the time, and it's a weird sort of signaling that goes on. And, I mean, it is what it is. Look, it's always been that way. That was really one of the things that Leo Strauss got famous for, is esoteric language, that certain class of people have to speak in sort of code, to communicate, because, lesser people won't understand it. And, so moderate people like us have to speak in code so that those extremists don't understand what we're really saying.
That's right. Hey, we got another rant. This is very generous. $100 from Tim Dex. Thank you. You've got a good show. I got to get my cowbell out next week. I will. You got a good show concept going. Keep it up. Yeah, we got a little good feedback, and you helped make it possible. So thank you very much. I'll put that to our tally. And now that was our rants. Now let me go to the power chats. And let's see here. I think I got a this one from Ken in Finland. It was kind of amazing. This guy, he sent me did you see that, of AI translated my video of me speaking in Finnish?
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh,
yeah. I put it on my timeline, and it just blew my mind because it understood my voice, and it had me speaking Finnish.
Oh,
and the guy said he sounded just exactly Finnish, but your voice. And talk about AI, what it's able to do now. This is amazing. So, like stuff like translators, as a profession, there's no need for those anymore.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you remember as kids, Star Trek, they had the Universal Translator,
Yeah.
So, and it would make it, people, and instead of having a thing holding up like this, because this actually works that way now. You talk into it, it translates to somebody else pretty good. But, I mean, it ain't going to be long before, the people will be able to watch us in Finland and we'll sound like we're speaking perfect Finnish, and which would be hilarious in a way. I mean,
well, I haven't done it, but I saw this, they were advertising. There's this one tool, say if you're like on a Zoom call and you have suppliers around the world, even though they have different languages, it will translate into your language in real time, and it will use their voice and it will change it. So it's like you can listen to them. I think it just sounds, it almost sounds like magic, but so we are really.
I was doing work for I can't say the name of the store. It's a big box chain of stores, and their IT department is in another country, and the people didn't speak any English, and they had a serious emergency that was going to bring the whole system down. And I used Google Translate to walk them through what they needed to do, because I couldn't get on their system, so I could get on their system and solve their problem. I'm thinking, if people only knew how fragile the world was, if Google Translate wasn't up at that moment, they're all screwed, but it worked. It worked good enough. I mean, the English that came back to me from these guys, it's close, close enough.
Yeah. Let me just, because it's our show and I can do what I want here. Let me just share that video, just a little snippet of it so you can see.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Yeah, it is. Here it is. And this is me in Finnish. Let me see if it works.
Yritän itse olla vähän maltillisempi. Yritän ainakin. Joten kun sanon tämän, en ole sellainen tyyppi, joka jatkuvasti huutaa.
Isn't that amazing?
That is great. Oh, oh man, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to have podcasts in other languages. I can definitely see this happening.
Well, this early on started, I should have figured this would happen, because some naughty people started with this, because they took a naughty person from the 20th century and translated his speeches with his voice into English. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen those.
Yeah, it's all those. Yeah, I did, but see, this is stuff I didn't realize was publicly available. I know, like, I've been working with a company that is doing training audio, and they're not even, you don't even have to give a script. You just say, basically, you give the AI the outlines of it, and you have to tweak it a little bit, and it sounds like two people. It's completely full shit. If you don't, unless then you can kind of find little things, but.
It's amazing. And like, I had a friend, Brandon, he went to Japan last year, and no problem in restaurants. You just take your phone and you could take a picture of the menu, and it translates it into English for you. So it's amazing. Anyway, Kim, thank you, Kim. He sent a $15. He had a question. Hi, Rams and Z-Man. Off topic. Are you, let me see here. Let me get this up here. Are you aware of Satyricon from Petronius? Are you? You probably are, Z-Man. You read that?
Oh, what's it called?
Satyrion from Titus Petronius. He wrote it, I think, in the 1st century.
It sounds familiar, but I probably didn't read it. I don't know. I'm getting old now. I remember.
Yeah, see,
a lot of stuff like that.
I'm not. This is some Latin story that was written in the 1st century by Petronius, and Victor Davis Hansen has appraised it, and I can't argue with him. This is exactly what is happening in the modern world, and it's spelled Satyrycon. And I think you would pronounce it Satyricon.
You know what? I don't think I've ever read this. I will look into it. I love stuff like this.
Yeah. And so it's recommended. I will look into that, Kim. I have to admit, I haven't seen that either. So thank you for that. Let's see here. I got one from Robert. This time, do you sense American patience for rioting is over? Americans no longer tolerate this nonsense and want to address it more the way Israel addresses it. Yeah, I think there's been a change in the last 5 years in public perception of this, although I didn't know if they ever really supported it. But I think people are really angry about it now. I think we talked about that. I think you would agree, wouldn't you, Z-Man?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely fatigue. And it's also, there's no sympathy for people who are guests. You can muster some sympathy for blacks because people can feel sorry for them because other circumstances, but not people who are guests. They're ingrates. I mean, that's really what it is. Every time I see one of these foreigners start bitching about America, I'm like, well, leave. Get out.
Yeah, that's what I always say. I said, this is a very dangerous white supremacist society. It might be better to go back to your homeland away from us.
Hey, look, here's the thing. If you go visit Russia, one of the things that people will tell you, I'll tell you if you ever visit Russia, and you're talking to Russians, don't say anything bad about Russia. You could say 10 things about how much you love Russia and then say, but the bus was late that one day. Why do you hate Russia? What's wrong with you? Because as far as they're concerned, you're a guest. You should always say nice things about their country. No exception. That's just the way they are.
Well,
and the way we should be.
I am that way. Well, I've traveled a lot. I know you have. I used to live in Hungary. I couldn't imagine when I was living in Hungary taking part of overstaying my visa, being illegal, and throwing fire bombs, and then the Hungarian people and waving the American flag as I overturn a Hungarian police car. I don't think that would go over well. I just, so it's bizarre that they would think that's good optics. So yeah, that's horrible. $5 from Sif Oil. Thank you. No kings. Trump won the popular vote. Did Dems stop caring about all of the sudden? I think they're doing the no kings because they're thinking he's abusing his authority. But yeah, this is kind of rich coming from Democrats who had FDR and others in there. So
and Obama.
Yeah,
they were there. Obama was Jesus, for God's sakes.
But I mean, if you're going to worry about the president exceeding his authority, Democrats, I could do it. They don't understand that. They're stupid. They don't probably even know who FDR is anymore. But I don't. I honestly think this is going to fizzle. I don't think this is a targeted right because it's just kind of bizarre. No kings. Well, I don't think most people would understand this that are just regular normie type people.
And this is not the 18th century. We didn't just overthrow the British. I mean,
I know. I think a lot of people are like, what king? What are you talking about? I know. It's like, yeah, we're coming out. We're going to demonstrate against the monarchy. And, it's like, we got to go after those clerics. People are like, what are you talking about?
Well, if you look at like young people on social media, they call each other king all the time.
They do. I know.
It's a compliment. It's just so stupid. But the thing about it is that these guys, it's a good example. This happens to me every once in a while. I get into my little sort of silo sometimes online, and I'll talk to somebody in the real world, and I'll talk about, and I'll realize, no, I'm in this narrow little internet silo. I break out of it. It all happens to all of us. I mean, it's just the way it's going to be, And these people are never break out. They're always in there. In that world, they thought this no kings thing was just that's a killer. Oh my God, that's going to work,
And I could just imagine if I went to let's catch a Mexican theme. Let's say I went to my local Mexican restaurant and I told the little chica there, "Are you going to the No Kings protest?" She'd be like, "I know." This appeals to these little girls that go to college that are, being brainwashed. And it's just, the same people that marched in the Pussy Hat. Remember the Pussy Hat
Oh,
March? Did that
yeah,
really happen? Or am I
yeah,
dreaming? They actually
yeah.
wore a vagina on their head. They thought that was a good look. And yeah,
At the time, I knew a woman who went to that, and she came back to the office wearing that hat. And and people just started laughing at her. And it took her almost most of the day to realize people were just laughing at her. She thought she was an idiot. And
I know.
she was completely clueless. So she was just locked into that weird little space, See, what they should have called it is No Queens. Then they could have tricked people into thinking that, probably getting rid of Lindsey Graham, aren't we?
Well, no, then that'd be bad for Pride Month.
I forgot about that.
Speaking of which, how has that been like a non-event this year? Just a few years ago, everyone was worshiping Pride Month. Now it's like everyone just like pretends it's not happening. It's funny how things.
Most of the sports teams decided to drop their pride stuff, to do it, and because they realized it. Except for the Boston Red Sox, they had a drag show in the stadium during the game. I think it was sometime this week. They had, like the drag queen shows where they, whatever they, I really don't know what a drag show is, to be honest. I mean, I just assume it's men in dresses walking around, but it could be more to it. But.
Yeah, that was when I was young, I understood there was drag shows, but there wasn't the idea of being transgender. It was, as near as I could figure, guys, I personally never went to one of these, but it was a kitschy thing because homosexual men, for whatever reason, they like kitsch, and they thought it was real funny to go to like an underground club and see other homosexual men dress up as an exaggerated version of a woman, and they would tee-hee and laugh about that. I don't get it. I don't really get it, because if you're gay, wouldn't you be attracted to guys that look? I don't get it, but that's what it was. And so
there's also a way, like Flip Wilson used to play Geraldine when I was a little kid. That was on television. He was a black comic, and he would dress up as Geraldine, and it was a way for him to make fun of women. It was he was spoofing women. It was, and so there was no sex involved. It was just cornball humor. This is obviously something completely different.
Well, because that is a transgender thing, and a lot of the gay men, they kind of have a weird feeling about. I mean, they like to hang around women a bit, but Milo, I know he's he has his issues, but every once in a while he'll say something funny because he's on his trying to be straight thing he's doing now. And he goes, God, I really, really try to have sex with a woman, and I'm getting into it, but then she opens her mouth and it just ruins it. I don't know how you straight guys do it. I just can't. And I just found that a little funny.
I just thought of a little funny story here. A long time ago, my buddies and I were down in Key West. We had never been to Key West, and we didn't know that there was a lot of.
Oh, that's a very gay, city. Yeah,
it's not completely gay, but there's a sort of San Francisco type of gay. But we didn't know, and we were just having some fun. And when we were walking, and we could see in the distance there's some sort of club or something like that, and there was noise. And as we're getting closer, we're like, "Is that Marilyn Monroe? Is someone dressed like Marilyn Monroe?" But the person was like 6'5", and as we got closer, it was this drag club, and it was Liza Minnelli, the two men dressed as Liza Minnelli and Marilyn Monroe, but they both could play for the NBA or maybe the NFL. They were huge. I mean, and we were afraid to actually laugh and point at them because, I mean, they could kick our ass, So we just kind of quietly walked past, like, okay.
Yeah. It is strange. Let's see. Did I get them all? I think I got all the.
Well, you got a super sticker for $10, and a Carl Pinkert dropped in $10.
Oh, did I miss something? Hang on here. Let's see here. Sometimes these come in late, so let me look at it. So thanks for catching that. Because what happens is supposed to go to my Streamelements. So let me go through this and make sure I got these all on that. Because I always feel bad if I miss one. All right, let's see here. Scroll. Good. We had a good crowd, like over 1,200. A lot of good comments, and I'm scrolling through all these comments, so that's a good sign.
I'm going to tell you, Rick Merritt, he gets a free.
Oh, here is Carl Pinkert. Yeah, $10. Yeah, I think I had him, and let's see here. Super sticker, Carl 9X. So that's just a donation. Thank you for that. And then, oh yeah, the No Kings. We talked about that one. That one did go over. So
There's a
okay,
comment here that needs to be pointed out. Rick Merritt, he's definitely going to get a free subscription to the main site. Z-Man doesn't look his age or his voice. He looks much younger. Oh man, what a guy!
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good compliment. It's a good compliment. You could get you have a face for radio or something like that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, that it's always good. So, okay, I think we got them all. So this was a great show, and we kind of changed gears. And next week we may pivot back to the propaganda one. Who knows? Maybe we'll be on Iran. Or something.
I did a show on Bugman. I did a post on Bugman and the film stuff. There's a lot of neat stuff in there. Oh, you got a late one there. So,
let me see here. Let me get those. Oh yeah, here it is. $2. I don't consider the Mexicans in Texas my people. Well, I understand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like all edge cases. It's just a judgment call, really.
Yeah, I mean, there used to be a lot more within the white race, even with my grandfather's generation, because he was always big. He worked in the Chicago in the factory, and he would meet someone like you, Z-Man. He would ask you, you would say your last name, and the first thing he would say was, "Oh, what kind of name is that? I mean, what's your background?" And that was considered rude. He just, just what's your ethnicity, and that was something they just did back then.
Oh, my grandparents always did that. I mean, they would every time he'd talk about someone, he'd say, "Oh, and he's Irish." I mean, he just was like, "That was I got this idea that in the future, after the revolution, everybody's name at their last name, their surname, has a hyphen and their primary ethnicity. So that way we don't have to go to Wikipedia anymore. It solves the problem. We all know who we are, and we can just leave it at that."
Yeah. I've got doing this gig for a long time. I am a very good expert at, when you do this so long, you don't even have to look up the early life section anymore. It's just something real bizarre, anti-white perversion. And I look and I'm like, yeah, I know this guy's early life. I don't even have to look it up at this.
You got another late one. People like doing these right at the last minute.
I know. I like them too. We're not complaining about that, so that's good. Let me see here. $10. Thank you. Drag shows are a form of ceremonial magic to summon fallen angel spirits to possess new hosts. Spiritual warfare for the evil one. Well, traditionally Christianity is opposed to this sort of thing. That is true. It is sort of an inversion of, I think, Christianity. That's one of the reasons it's opposed to homosexuality, because it's a perversion of the natural order. So I could see the same argument with cross-dressing.
Yeah, I mean, look, people have always known that a fair portion of the population needs rules. Some portion of the population needs a lot of rules and strong enforcement. The guys who are wearing dresses, they need a firm hand to keep them in line. Either they wear their dress on the fringe of society out in some caravan in Nowhereville, or they stop wearing a dress. One or the other.
Yeah, well, it used to be, like I said, more when I was younger, it was always kind of more underground clubs in certain parts of the city. It wasn't in your kindergarten class, right? So there's been a big jump there that's not exactly healthy. So,
the weird thing is in person, I've only seen, and I haven't seen a lot of cross-dressers, but every one of them has been so absurd looking. It's ridiculous. There was one that used to be at a restaurant where we had an office in the city. And this black dude would wear heels. He was probably 6'4" normally. He probably weighed, he was linebacker size, right? 250, easy. And he obviously went to the gym, and he would wear heels. So he was like 6'8", and he's in a dress. He just looks so ridiculous. He was bald too. It was like the whole thing was like a joke, and it was, the best part is that the normal black people thought he was some sort of like bad juju. They were terrified of him. He'd walk into the restaurant and all leave. I'll just get the hell out.
Yeah, it was funny how at least I was sort of naive back in the day. I had this guy I worked with. You wouldn't know. He always talked about his girlfriend, and I kind of believed him, but and then he just left slip like, "Oh yeah, this is I won a award because I was like Mr. Leather." And I'm like, "Oh, that's weird." I had no idea what that. I'm like, leather's kind of cool. I didn't know people could win contests for that. Who knew? I was a little bit naive, a little embarrassing, I guess. So, I've done cringy stuff on my stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, very different world when we were young men. I mean, I can tell you, I remember the first time I ever met someone who was a homosexual. I had never met somebody who was a homosexual. I was in my 20s when I first met a homosexual.
Yeah, it used to be a big, I can remember it was an insult. I mean, that was something you did not want to admit to because you called everyone that, but you didn't literally mean they were that. But yeah, that was, and I remember way back in the early 80s, people arguing, no, Boy George isn't gay. What are you talking about? I mean, it's like, come on.
Or Elton John.
Yeah.
Hey, when I was a kid, we played a game that it began with the word smear, and you can imagine what the second word was.
Yeah, I played that game too. That was an insane game because it was, I think we could say, smear the queer. And what it was, the only rule was, at least how we played in Colorado, if you had the ball, you were the queer and everyone else had to beat upon you until you threw the ball. It's like, I don't know why you would want the ball, but you try to go after it anyway. It was a crazy game. But
it was a stupid game, but that's what little boys play, Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but
it would go on until someone ended up crying eventually because someone would get hurt always, It's like
the first time I ever met a confirmed homosexual, the person said to me, for whatever reason, they said, "Oh, I'm gay." And I didn't know what to say. So I said, well, how's that working out for you? And they just gave me this blank look and walked away because I don't think they knew what the answer was. I'm like, I didn't know what to say. I mean, so, and all the people around started laughing at me like, why did you ask him that? I'm like, I couldn't think of anything else to say.
Yeah, and one more thing, just memory lane. In the 70s, I was young, but a lot of people really at the time didn't know Liberace was gay because, I mean, now it's just obvious, but he had a beard. They used to have a beard, and he was engaged to some figure skater. It was all fake, but it was, so things have changed quite a bit. Not necessarily for the better. But guys, it's been a great show. I think we got everything now, right? I didn't miss anything. Some came in late. So we'll be back next Wednesday. And if you have ideas, send them to us. We'll see what's in the news or what's a hot topic for who knows, maybe we'll be in a war with Iran or something. I see Alex Jones, emergency Wednesday broadcast. Alex Jones, his whole career is about, everything is the end of the world every day I don't know. It seems like people to get wise up a little bit, but they don't.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.